Namaste. Welcome to Jack Colley's Black Book. This is episode 38. This episode is already feeling more like a transition. I almost feel like I want to do something a little bit different, take a little bit different path with this podcast. And who knows, I might return to what I've been doing with the Black Book. But I have felt as of late that I have just needed to maybe adjust course a little bit. So what we're going to do today in preparation of this transition is I want to talk about the goddess Kali, and I'm hoping that that will give you some insight into some of the questions I've been raising, some of the processing that I've been doing over the years and over the months in recording in the Black Book, and in talking about the goddess Kali and why I have adopted her last name as my last name in what I feel is my truest persona. In many ways, I think Jack Colley is more who I am than my given name and who I was. It's almost, to use kind of the Jungian concept of, you have a sense, you've always had a sense of who you are, and part of life's journey, part of your task in life is to slowly take off these ego layers, ultimately exposing who you feel you were meant to be, if that makes sense, to become, fully actualized, which are, a term that other theoreticians and practitioners of psychology would use. And so I'm hoping that looking at Kali will just give you some insight into how I kind of process the world. And then the only other thing that I want to do for this episode is I want to lay a foundation for one of the pages in my Black Book that deals with the terrorist attacks on September 11. And I have some ideas, and I want to strongly lay the groundwork that these ideas are more about reflecting and evaluating forgiveness than a commentary on what we should or shouldn't have done as a nation in response to 9/11. So I want to lay that framework. I want to make sure that that is going to be the focus, that people don't interpret what I'm going to say as being some sort of pro-terrorist commentary, because it's not going to be. But anyway, we'll get to that. The goddess Kali. Let's get over here. I got a picture of her. Here she is. This is the goddess Kali. And, when I go to the Hindu temple, and I just spend time there, and I've said in other episodes, I absolutely love just the different images, the different attributes of gods, because to me, the Hindu gods and goddesses are almost like different attributes of gods, of the god, of Brahman. And I love the music. I love the otherworldliness of it. I think the Catholic Church did something, has something right where, they have these beautiful cathedrals, and you just feel like you're in a completely different world. And I think that that's an important idea, that we get to leave this world and enter this other world. And I get that feeling when I go into the Hindu temple. And Kali is the goddess who I think for the first time I understand, or I have been able to be at peace with the evil in the world. I've been able to understand the evil that I have produced in the world as an imperfect human being, and as somebody who can often be self-centered, and somebody who can often have his own self-interest in front of everybody else's. And Kali has helped me truly understand that. And in a way, being raised with Jesus, where Jesus was like the ultimate archetype that I was supposed to be patterning my life after. And Jesus has always been kind of God incarnate for me. That is to say, if God were to come to earth in human form, God would look like Jesus. Now, I recognize that if I were born in a different country, if I were born in a different place, I would probably be engaging a very different symbol of God. But I was born where I was born. I was raised with what I was raised. I went to the Christian church. And so Jesus, for me, has been the one that has represented God. And yet, the Christian religion, for me, has fallen quite short. In many ways, growing up, things were communicated to me and taught to me very well intentioned. So I don't wish this to be a criticism, but it is a critique. You know, I was always told that if I had a problem, if I was struggling with something, I should just put it at Jesus's feet. That never worked for me. And I know people will say, well, that's because you lacked faith or whatever. But in reality, Jesus really fell short in that regard when I was young and when I had problems and struggles and was really questioning things. I would do my best to put these things before Jesus's feet, and do the whole, okay, you just handle it. I trust you to handle it. That just never worked for me. And whether it was my fault or whether it was Jesus's fault, I don't know. In my mind, it was more the shortcomings of the image, I think, that didn't really speak to me or didn't really communicate to me in a way, didn't really help me make sense of all the stuff in my life that I didn't understand. And I lived with that. And in the other area where I think Christianity has fallen incredibly short is in its explanation of evil. Because, like it or not, the Bible was used to support slavery. It was used to support white supremacy. The Bible was used for these things. And the Bible, in my mind, does fall very short of explaining evil. And when I'm talking about evil, I'm not talking about, you called somebody a name or you stole something from a store. I'm not talking about just, what we would call sins or mistakes or whatever. I'm talking about the evil of Auschwitz. I'm talking about the evil in the Japanese intern camps. I'm talking about the rape of Nanking. I'm talking about the Abu Ghraib. I'm talking about torture with the intent simply to cause pain, like no other reason other than to cause pain because you hate another individual so much. Like that level of evil that we experienced in war. Christianity just falls very short of explaining how that happened or why that happens or how God could let that happen even. And for me, as I've tried to make sense of that, Kali keeps showing up. So, and I know to my Christian friends, this might sound weird, but just like Jesus sometimes shows up for you, when you're trying to make sense of something. There are times when Jesus still shows up to me, but when I'm trying to make sense of hurt, when I'm trying to make sense of pain, when I'm trying to make sense of cancer, when I'm trying to make sense of miscarriages, of children who have died too early, when I try to make sense of that, it's not Jesus that shows up for me, it's the goddess Kali. And so in my mind, at least, I have this interesting marriage between Jesus and Kali, that this is my God and this is my goddess, and this is how I make sense of God. This is how I engage God through these avatars. So the word avatar, it's a Hindu term for God coming to earth in some sort of a human-like form to communicate something to us or to help us with something. And in my mind, Jesus and Kali have always been the two avatars, if you will, that have guided me and helped me to make sense of things. And so this is Kali. And if there's one thing I want to introduce you to my goddess Kali about, it's that she is the goddess of destruction, and it's an out of control destruction. It's just destroying everything. But here's what I like about this. As Kali is destroying everything, and she's got all of these symbols, she's got this belt of arms, of severed arms, she's got this necklace of severed heads, she's got a severed head in her left hand, she's got blood, she's got a bowl, and there's an interesting story behind it. But what's interesting to me is the purpose of her destruction is to clear space. And the way I conceptualize it is to plant a lotus. And so we have this really beautiful image of Kali, and I could almost again look at the goddess Kali working with the god Jesus, and the goddess Kali is just clearing everything away with violence, just clearing everything away. And then behind all of this destruction, lotuses are planted. Jesus comes along and plants something, or new life is started because the old fades away. It's the forest fire, it's the bolt of lightning that starts the forest, and the whole forest burns down. And then the next season, all of a sudden, there's all of this new life out of the destruction. And for me, Kali has just helped me make a lot more sense of that. Now, speaking of this destruction, I don't know if I have another slide or not. Oh, I do. I can't go there quite yet, though. But speaking of all of destruction and trying to make sense of destruction, on September 11, so 9/11, of course, we lost many, many lives in America due to a terrorist event. And something has been chewing on my mind over the last several years about this event. And we're going to unpack that in the next episode. We're going to look at what is happening when violence begets violence. So violence seems to always turn into more violence. And what if we interrupted that violence with forgiveness? What might that look like? And again, I want to kind of lay the foundation, the framework for this. This is not about a nation ignoring the terrorist attack of another nation. It's more raising questions and helping us to conceptualize things a little bit differently, in hopes that maybe we can look at some other ways to solve problems, solve things that were not our fault. Going back to the one episode, what to do with when somebody shits in your living room. It's fair to say that when we were attacked as a nation, somebody came in and shit in our living room, and we had to clean up the mess. And what does that mean? How can we learn from that and come out better individuals instead of potentially just making things worse? So that is the next episode. I hope people take it in the right spirit. It's just meant to challenge your thinking. It's not necessarily meant as a political commentary. That's something that I really don't wish to get into. I'll use politics and I'll use nations as learning tools for ourselves personally. But anyway, so that will be the next episode. All right. Namaste, my friends.